Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting right into the nitty-gritty of 3D CAD assembly. Think of it like taking individual digital bits and pieces and snapping them together. Precisely.
Right.
To build a whole virtual product.
Yeah.
And the payoff, you get these super realistic digital models. You can even create exploded views.
Exactly. Those are great for seeing how everything fits.
Right. Shows you exactly how every single part interacts.
Absolutely. And our mission today really is to dissect the core methods and the key tools used in this whole process, how these virtual parts get joined up.
And the different ways designers actually build these things from scratch.
Precisely. The fundamental strategies they use, all based on the great material you share with us.
Okay, so these digital parts, they don't just, magically know where to go. How do you actually tell them? How do you define those connections in the software?
Right. That's where assembly constraints come in. They're basically the rules.
Rules.
Yeah, the rules that govern how the parts fit together, and how they can move relative to each other inside that assembly file.
Okay, so rules. Give us a rundown then. What are some of the fundamental constraints doing the heavy lifting here?
Okay, let's start with a center axis. This one's your bread and butter for anything round, cylindrical, anything with a central axis, really.
Like putting a pin in a hole.
Exactly, spot on. The center axis constraint just aligns the center line of the pin with the center line of the hole. Perfect fit. And your sources mention inserting a round bar into a round hole. That's a textbook case for center axis.
Got it. Makes sense for, anything that spins or fits into something round. Okay, what's next? What's another key way we tell parts how to behave?
Next up, we have mate. This one's very intuitive. It basically makes two flat surfaces touch each other.
Like putting a butt flat on a table.
Perfect analogy. The bottom of the book, the top of the table, they're mated. Your material mentioned lining up two flat surfaces, and that's it. Direct surface contact.
Okay. Mate is contact, flat surfaces touching. Now, align sounds kind of similar.
Yeah.
But the name makes it sound a bit different than just touching.
Good point. You've hit on a key difference there. Mate brings surfaces into contact, right?
Right.
Align puts planar faces, flat faces on the same plane. They don't actually have to be touching.
Oh.
Think about maybe two sheets of paper standing upright in a file folder. Their flat sides are aligned. They're on the same vertical plane.
But there's probably a gap between them.
Exactly. So align is about being level, same plane, not necessarily touching, like the source said.
Okay, that's clear. Mate for touching, align for being on the same level.
Yeah.
What if we need a specific gap, though? A set distance between digital parts?
Yep, that's where the offset constraint is really useful. It lets you define an exact distance between two faces you select.
Oh, okay.
Think about spacing shelves in a bookcase. You'd pick the bottom face of one shelf, the top face of the one below it, type in the distance you want.
Boom. Done.
Exactly. Select faces, enter distance. That's the core of it.
Right, creating that precise separation. What about angles? Can we hinge things or set parts at specific angles to each other?
Absolutely. For that, you've got the orientation constraint.
Orientation, okay.
This tool lets you set a specific angle between two flat faces, or maybe work planes. A simple example. Adjusting the angle of a chair back relative to the seat.
Ah, yeah, I can picture that. You're defining that tilt.
Precisely.
And then there's one more. Tangency. The sources said this one's used a bit less often.
That's generally true, yeah. Tangency is for when you have curved surfaces that need to touch smoothly at a single point or along a line.
Like a ball bearing.
Exactly like a ball bearing sitting in its curved race. They touch at just one point, and that relationship is tangency. So maybe not used every day, like mate or align, but absolutely essential for certain kinds of geometry.
All right, so those are the rules of engagement, the constraints that tell our digital parts how to fit together. But where do the individual parts even come from? The material mentioned two main ways of creating them.
Exactly right. There are two sort of fundamental strategies for creating the components you then assemble. Bottom-up modeling and top-down modeling.
Bottom up. That sounds, pretty straightforward. Like building with Legos?
That's a great way to think about it. In bottom-up modeling, you design and create each individual part completely separately. Each one is its own file.
Like all the ingredients measured out first.
Precisely. You make the nut file, the bolt file, the washer file. Then, once they're all done, you bring them into a new assembly file.
And then use the constraints we just talked about.
Exactly. Then you use mate, align, center axis, offset, all those tools to position them correctly and connect them together. It really is that building blocks approach your source mentioned. All pieces ready before assembly.
Makes perfect sense. Design the nut, design the bolt. then virtually screw them together in the assembly using constraints.
Okay. Now, top-down modeling. Sounds like it flips that somehow.
It does, in a way. With top-down modeling, you often start your design within the assembly environment itself. You might sketch out the overall layout first.
So you don't start with separate parts.
Not necessarily. You often create new parts directly in the context of other parts that are already there. You build them around existing components.
Okay.
This is really powerful when you need a new part to fit perfectly with something else, especially if you're using standard library parts or something.
So let's say you have a complex housing design, and now you need to make a custom seal that fits exactly into a weird groove inside it. You'd use top-down.
That's a perfect example. And when you do that, the software often helps visually. The sources mentioned existing parts might look grayed out or ghosted.
Right, so you can focus on the new thing. Exactly. It helps you focus on designing the new part, the seal in your example, while still seeing exactly how it relates to the housing around it.
Oh.
And a really key part of top-down is often something called the project tool.
The project tool, what does that do?
Well, it lets you basically copy or project the geometry, edges, faces, curves from an existing part, like the housing, directly into the sketch you're using to create your new part, the seal.
And why is that so useful?
Because these projected elements are usually associative. They're linked. Think of it like a live connection.
Okay.
If the original part changes, say, the groove in the housing gets a little wider later on, any geometry on your seal that was projected from that groove will automatically update to match.
Wow, okay. That's smart.
It really is. The source highlighted this automatic updating. It ensures your parts always fit together correctly, even if the design evolves. It maintains that design intent.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
Especially for complex stuff where you know changes are going to happen. So bottom up is like having all your separate Lego bricks.
Yep.
And top down is more like sculpting a new piece directly onto your existing Lego model.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Yeah, and both methods have their, pros and cons.
Right.
Top down is brilliant for that perfect fit and keeping related parts linked. But in really huge assemblies, managing all those links, those dependencies can sometimes get a bit complex.
I can imagine.
Whereas bottom up, it's maybe more modular, easier to swap parts in and out. But getting that perfect fit might need more careful work with the constraints. The choice really depends on the project.
Okay, this has been a great deep dive into constraints and these two modeling approaches. So let's bring it back to the listener. Why is understanding these fundamentals actually valuable for them?
Well, having a solid grasp of these concepts, it gives you a real foundational understanding of how complex 3D designs are actually put together digitally. Whether you're just looking at a CAD model or trying to figure out the engineering behind a product you use, or you're just curious. Knowing about constraints and these modeling strategies gives you a framework.
Yeah, it lets you kind of see inside the design.
Exactly. You can start to dissect complex assemblies in your mind, understand why the designer made certain choices.
It really is like learning the basic grammar of 3D design, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you get the rules for how parts connect and the main ways they're created, you can start to understand much more complicated stuff. It's definitely a shortcut to understanding how digital products are built. And it can even help you visualize how real-world things are put together.
Absolutely. And with that understanding, you're just better equipped. You can engage with technical info, ask smarter questions.
And just appreciate the complexity more.
Exactly. Appreciate the precision and the interconnectedness that goes into making the products we use every day.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. How might that choice, bottom-up versus top-down modeling, how might that strategic decision impact not just how fast a design project gets done, but also how flexible it is? How easy is it to change later? Think about different industries, different products. When would you absolutely want all the pieces defined upfront, bottom-up style?
And when would it be much more powerful to build new things right inside the context of the existing design using that top-down approach?
Yeah, it's all about picking the right fundamental strategy for the job at hand. Something to think about.